If you've watched my videos before, I'm no stranger to horror comedies, but most of the movies that I've looked at in that genre are twists on horror. Films that take horror tropes and turn them on its end, and in a way, presents them in a somewhat novel or at least incredibly subversive way. But the fact of the matter is that combining horror and comedies is nothing new. In fact, as long as there have been horror, there have been horror comedies. Buster Keaton was performing comedy acts in haunted houses way before Dracula even hit the screen for the first time. Abbott and Costello met literally every Universal monster by the time 1955 rolled around, and people thought The Old Dark House was so funny they made it twice. But just to make sure that the movies weren't just cast aside, a lot of directors would include established horror icons in this, which is why I want to talk about The Raven. It was very loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe, and it featured horror icons from the past and present. Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, and all of them had amazing scenes in it. In fact, their chemistry was so good, they were brought together for another movie. That was, and I'm being serious here, a bit more grounded in reality. A Comedy of Terrors is about a drunk mortician and his assistant who are down on their luck and threatened with eviction.
You can't even keep our heads above water. Why, you've only had one customer in the past 9 months.
Which I would have to think is a good thing. Isn't that good that they're not getting a lot of business? If they're mad at anybody, shouldn't they blame the town's doctors? Screw those people for keeping people healthy and stuff. Anyway, he attempts to drum up some business by smothering a wealthy landowner in his sleep and conveniently showing up to offer a proper funeral.
The burdensome tasks of exequy and sepulture.
What?
I'll bury him for you.
But after he finds out that the man's wife has skipped town with all the money, the mortician decides the only course of action is to murder his own landlord. Which I guess has a little bit of logic to it. Can't collect the rent if you're 6 feet under. However, it turns out their landlord isn't quite as dead as they'd like. So literally the rest of the movie is them trying to subdue him long enough to keep him in a coffin so that he can be put to rest and they can collect their money, and eventually it ends with a huge fight with everybody dying or something. It's really dumb. It is a really dumb movie. It's also really fun.
I don't think he's quite dead enough yet to bury him.
You don't think he's quite dead enough yet?
This movie was produced by American International Pictures, who at the time was trying to release as many pictures rapid fire as humanly possible, usually centered around what they called the Arkoff formula. Arkoff is named after producer Samuel Arkoff, who had a go-to strategy to make low-budget but effective films. They had to include action and adventure, revolution or novel ideas, killing either on-screen or implied, oratory, noteworthy speeches and dialogue, fantasy or some aspect of abnormal storytelling, and fornication, at least as much as they could get away with in the 1960s. I'm so happy to know this movie exists. And this film actually does cross off each of those on the checklist, so at least the higher-ups were happy with it, and audiences thought it was okay. Movie didn't make a lot of money, but they didn't really lose anything either. So really, this movie has to stand alone. It's not a cultural milestone. It's not an indication of where movies were at the time. So let's just view it as a whole, and my God, this is a cartoon.
Ouch, that hurt.
It is a live-action Chuck Jones short from hell, from the soundtrack to the slapstick to the sound effects. But at the same time, remember when I said that this is kind of rooted in reality? It's because nothing in here is that fantastic. All of this could be achieved by normal, conniving, evil people. There is a possibility that someone would be so desperate and evil that they would kill people to make money burying the bodies. Or that a down-on-its-luck mortician would be so cheap he would reuse coffins. Or that a man would be declared dead but wake up at his own funeral. All of which I have looked up and are actual things that have happened.
Did you try the knob?
No, why?
My favorite part of this movie is not really so much a specific scene or moment in this, it's just in general how all of these actors take their silliness so serious. And there's logic in that expression, trust me. Because you have people like Peter Lorre. People may actually be more familiar with Peter Lorre from cartoon depictions of him than the actual actor himself, but that doesn't mean that he did not have an established career, playing well-rounded villains and conniving creatures going as far back as 1931's M, where he played a vicious child murderer. And in this, he's a bumbling, love-struck sidekick.
Pardon me. I didn't mean to do it.
Peter Lorre's character does such a great job pining after the wife, especially because you know that they have actually interacted with each other before. They played a husband and wife in previous movies.
Poor bear, poor bear.
I don't know what that word means, but I can't take it any longer. I can't take it.
No.
And for the second time in this year's movie reviews, we've got Boris Karloff here. This is way, way further in his career, and he is far from the ruthless monsters he played in his youth. Because of his physical limitations, he actually was going to play the landlord, but because it was such a demanding role, he had to kind of settle for something else. So instead, he plays the old coot who just wants to take his medicine.
Do you hear his churlish insults, Father? Father!
What? Sugar? Yes, there you are.
Shall I give him some medicine?
Did that cat just gulp? Not to say he doesn't have a lot of great moments, especially when he's acting like a complete senile old man playing violin and mishearing everyone around him.
We have gathered ourselves together within these bud-wreathed walls to pay homage to the departed soul of, what's his name?
I think if there is one actor who steals every scene that he's in, it's Basil Rathbone.
Dispel thy charm, and let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped.
If you know any of the old Sherlock Holmes movies, he is a fantastic actor. And in this one, he plays the landlord who the mortician and assistant actively try to kill or keep buried alive for a massive amount of the runtime of the film. And he out-hams Vincent Price.
The devil damn thee black, thou cream-faced loon!
I cannot help but laugh every time he wakes up and starts screaming lines from Macbeth, or starts shouting things that would never be said in today's vocabulary.
Everybody else knows you're dead, Mr. Black, except apparently you.
What jiggery-pokery is this?
The absolute best is when he gets shot repeatedly but refuses to die until his monologue is finished.
His hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more.
That I'll believe when I see it.
This will not come as a shock to anyone, but Vincent Price is amazing in this.
Mr. Black, he's dying.
Oh. Oh, how sad.
Don't ask me to name a scene, because he milks every appearance for all that it's worth. His facial expressions, his stumbling, drunken antics, his rapid-fire machine gun put-downs and insults. The man is a treasure.
I despise you! Demon Rum will get you yet!
I look forward to that day with keen anticipation, madam.
The movie doesn't also just relegate itself to the main cast and just to those four. There are some great side characters and guest appearances that are really fun to watch. Vincent Price's wife, played by Joyce Jameson, is an interesting character because she's not a blank slate female character with no personality, especially in the moments where she's allowed to sing.
It's not dead and...
Also, Joe E. Brown is here. If you've ever seen Some Like It Hot, you know that this guy's really great. He plays a gravedigger and he makes this face. right, cool. Thanks for stopping by. And that's pretty much it for this movie. All right, there is one more thing that is definitely worth mentioning. If you watch the opening credits, there is one thing that kind of sticks out. They all have little title cards that acknowledge the heavyweights of the film. You got Price, you got Lorre, you got Beverly Hills, that's a great stage name, and Rhubarb.
Nice Cleopatra.
Here's where this gets interesting. There was a movie in the 50s called Rhubarb, and it was about an orange tabby cat who owns a baseball team. That cat was really famous. This cat had a filmography that other actors would murder for. In horror and sci-fi, it was known as the cat that was always way bigger than a cat should be, like it showed up in The Incredible Shrinking Man and Village of the Giants. But for the more elite Hollywood circle, it also showed up in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was Audrey Hepburn's cat. My favorite thing about reading about Rhubarb is that under its Wikipedia article, this is a cat with a Wikipedia entry. It says that the cause of death is unknown, like it's a mystery. And I'd like to think that there's this big Hollywood conspiracy that after it got the part in Breakfast at Tiffany's, other cat actors put a hit out on it.
Empty. Oh, you're feeling better already, huh?
Comedy of Terrors, in its entirety, is a movie. It's not a great one. It's not a bad one. It's just an interesting bookmark in the careers of everybody who's involved. But it's not boring in the slightest. You want to keep watching it, and I know that because I just watched it for the first time 2 months ago. It's got a really creepy premise along the lines of Sweeney Todd or Arsenic and Old Lace, but at the same time, you've got really great actors who are just having fun being the wildest characters they could possibly be, and it's only for the better. This may have just been a quick cash grab to get Peter Lorre, Vincent Price, and Boris Karloff back together, but if you've ever seen The Raven, and I really suggest you do because it's got wizards fighting each other and a man turning into a bird and all sorts of hilarious crap, you would know that they bounce off each other very well regardless of a script. But every now and then a good monster mash doesn't have to win awards in order for you to want to watch it.
Well, if you can't lick 'em, join 'em.
Next time we'll look at a movie that's a lot more modern, but definitely not as well known.
We have at least 14 hours of surgery ahead of us. And I would like to get it all done in one session.